I ended a 20-year friendship with a truth that completely shocked me. It was the moment when her daughter was lying unconscious in the hospital, yet she was casually taking bikini photos on the beach, smiling and writing the caption, "Living my best life." And when she came back, instead of hugging her crying daughter, she turned to accuse me of taking over her role as a mother. Want to know what happened next? Let's dive into the story. If you had asked me a year ago, I would have sworn that my 20-year friendship with Monica was the one thing that could never be shaken. We grew up together, shared every sorrow and joy, and I used to believe that not even marriage, jobs, or countless moves could ever put a crack in what we had. I was wrong. But before I tell you about the moment that friendship shattered, let me take you back to the very first day we met. I'm Hannah, 38 years old, and I work as an interior designer. People usually imagine my job as something glamorous: color palettes, Italian leather chairs, dazzling living rooms. The truth is, 70% of the time I'm holding a measuring tape, kneeling to check wall corners, and arguing with painters about how mint green is different from teal. I have a warm little family: my husband, Rob, and my 15-year-old daughter, Sophie. To me, family has always been my safe harbor, and I thought Monica felt the same way about hers. Monica is a year older than me, now 39. She teaches yoga, the kind of instructor who can twist herself into a pretzel while still speaking in a soft voice, as if she's inviting you to sip herbal tea. Back in our college group, Monica was famous for having a very clear personal brand: the dream of becoming a mother. While everyone else was busy talking about travel, careers, or relationships, Monica would go on and on about how many kids she'd have, what she'd name them, how she'd teach them to read. For Monica, motherhood wasn't just a goal, it was her dream, the very definition of her life. And when her daughter, Isabella, was born, Monica seemed to transform into the brightest, most radiant version of herself. We met in our freshman year of college. Nothing special at first. We were in the same class, sat near each other, and shared a mutual hatred for applied math. One afternoon, I forgot my pen, and Monica handed me a dull pencil with a grin, saying, "Careful, the tip keeps breaking." It sounded trivial, but it was the first time I laughed freely in class since the semester began. From that day on, we were inseparable. Through the years, we stood by each other at every turning point. When Monica broke up with her first love, the guy who thought playing guitar was a career and studying was just a hobby, I was the one holding the tissue box. When I was stressed out from my design internship, Monica dragged me out for ice cream, telling me, "Just build that living room model in your head. Forget the paper." When I married Rob, she was the bridesmaid in a pastel pink dress she absolutely hated. And when Monica gave birth to Isabella, I drove through the night to make it to the hospital. Coincidentally, I found out I was pregnant with Sophie just a few months later. And so, the two girls, Sophie and Isabella, practically grew up together. You know how some relationships don't need the label cousins, but still feel like family? That was them. They spent weekends together, built forts in the living room, ate popcorn, and argued over the TV remote. They had joint birthday parties, and at one point, even begged us to buy them matching friendship bracelets. In the summers, my family would take Isabella along on beach trips. In the winters, Monica invited Sophie over to help decorate her Christmas tree. Watching them grow up side by side, I used to think, we've built an extended family. Sometimes I'd even joke, if our daughters marry brothers one day, we'll officially be in-laws. We'd laugh until our sides hurt, never imagining that someday it could all fall apart. Back then, Monica was, in my eyes, the kind of friend you simply couldn't replace. The one I trusted enough to give a house key. The one who could text me at midnight just to ask, "Are you awake?" And I'd answer without hesitation. The one I always believed put family above everything else. All those little pieces made me certain this friendship would last a lifetime. I used to say that with absolute confidence, and it was that very certainty that made the cracks later on so much more painful. Those seemingly peaceful years led me to a moment I'll never forget. After what started as an ordinary morning, Monica called me, her voice so excited she was practically out of breath. She had booked a 10-day vacation in Greece. "Alone, just me," she said, as if that were the most important part of the announcement. I forced a polite laugh. Honestly, it wasn't anything new. Monica had a habit of resetting herself with solo trips, places where she claimed she could breathe, meditate, and find balance again. And as usual, she asked me, "Can you watch Isabella for me?" I agreed right away, without a second thought. Isabella was as familiar with our house as Sophie herself. She even had her own desk in Sophie's room and a section of the closet just for her things so she wouldn't have to lug them back and forth. To me, Isabella wasn't just my best friend's daughter. She was the child I had watched grow up right alongside my own. So Monica being away for 10 days didn't worry me. I just thought, okay, a few extra snack runs, a couple more late-night movies. No big deal. The first 2 days went exactly as expected. Sophie and Isabella turned the living room into a mini movie theater, piling up pillows and blankets, eating cold pizza with popcorn. They giggled every time the characters kissed, then raced to predict how the story would end. From the kitchen, hearing that laughter made me feel at ease. Everything was normal, even joyful. On the third day, something small but unusual happened. That evening, I was making dinner as usual and called the girls down. Sophie came running, chewing gum and laughing, but Isabella was nowhere to be seen. She's probably listening to music in the room, I guessed, and asked Sophie to go get her. A few minutes later, Sophie came back, shrugging. I knocked, but I didn't hear anything. A flicker of worry passed through me. I went upstairs myself, knocked on the door, and called Isabella's name. No response. I tried the doorknob, it was locked. That stopped me cold. Isabella never locked doors. Not at my house, not at Monica's, never. She was the kind of kid who loved blasting music with the door wide open so it spilled down the hallway. That locked door felt like a blaring red warning sign. I called again, trying to keep my voice steady. Isabella, are you okay? Open the door, sweetheart. The heavy silence was my only answer. Unease spread through my chest like wildfire. I hurried downstairs, grabbed the spare key from the drawer, and my hands trembled as I slid it into the lock. The door swung open, and in that instant, I wished I had never seen what was waiting for me. Isabella was lying motionless on the bed, her face pale, her breathing so faint, it was almost non-existent. Beside her, a few empty pill bottles were scattered on the floor, and a neatly folded note sat on the desk. In my head, a hollow roar echoed, like the world had tilted off its axis. Behind me, Sophie appeared. She screamed, her eyes wide and spilling with tears. I wanted to shield her, to block her from seeing, but it was too late. Her strangled sobs filled the room. I rushed to Isabella's side, shaking her gently, calling her name, and with trembling hands I dialed 911. I cradled that limp body in my arms, forcing myself to stay calm as I gave the dispatcher our address, while Sophie's heart-wrenching sobs echoed behind me. My heart pounded, sweat poured down my temples, but I knew I had to keep my mind clear. Every second stretched into what felt like a lifetime, and in that moment, the quiet life we knew veered into a direction none of us could have ever imagined. The ambulance tore through the night, sirens slicing the air. I sat beside Isabella, clutching her cold hand, my mind a tangled mess of fear and disbelief. In the chaos, I pulled out my phone and dialed Monica. Her familiar voice came through, but there wasn't a trace of worry in it. Gasping for breath, I told her Isabella was unconscious, that we were on our way to the hospital. There was a pause, a beat of silence. Then Monica answered, her tone slow, almost detached. Are you sure she isn't just looking for attention? I was frozen. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I didn't expect my best friend to scream or lose control, but at the very least, some alarm, some immediate reassurance that she was coming back right away. Just that would have been enough. But all I heard was indifference. I tried to calm her, to explain how serious the situation was, but that phrase kept echoing in my head all the way to the hospital. I hung up, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. Inside me there was still a sliver of hope. Maybe Monica was in shock. Maybe she hadn't fully registered what I'd said. Maybe she would book a flight immediately, rush to the airport, and take the next plane home. That would be the normal reaction of a mother. But as the ambulance turned into the hospital gate, my phone vibrated. A message from Monica. Changing the ticket costs $250. Not sure it's worth it. I stared at the screen, thinking I must have read it wrong. But the words were clear, blunt, and cold to the point of cruelty. A dollar amount weighed heavier than her own daughter's life. I was stunned, but underneath the shock, I felt something inside me quietly start to crack. In the ER, doctors rushed Isabella in. They started IV fluids, ordered tests, moved with urgent precision. A stern-faced doctor came out and spoke to me with unwavering certainty. Isabella showed clear signs of long-term depression, and what she had done couldn't be dismissed as just seeking attention. She needed careful, ongoing care. I nodded over and over, fear and sorrow twisting inside me. The doctor's words didn't just confirm my worst fears, they also exposed the blindness in the way Monica brushed everything aside. In the days that followed, I practically lived at the hospital. I took time off work, burned through every last vacation day to stay by Isabella's side. For 3 nights straight, I slept in a plastic chair against the wall, waking at every little movement she made. I wiped the sweat from her forehead, changed cold compresses, and read aloud old stories. The same ones she and Sophie used to love when they were little. On the second night, Isabella opened her eyes, her voice hoarse and fragile as a whisper. She asked me, "Doesn't my mom love me anymore?" That question cut straight into my heart like a knife. I held her tight, choking back sobs I couldn't control. I didn't know how to answer, because the truth was, I couldn't understand why Monica had chosen to stand on the sidelines either. All I could do was clutch that frail arm and promise her that, at least in this moment, she wasn't alone. During that time, I kept sending Monica updates, messages about Isabella's condition, photos so she could see her daughter was still alive. The replies I got back were short and hollow. "Yeah, got it. Busy." And mixed in with those empty scraps of words, Monica's social media was overflowing with something else entirely. Photos of her in a blazing red bikini, posing on a sunlit beach, captions bubbling with excitement, living my best life. Every time I saw those photos, my blood boiled. I was furious and bewildered all at once. The friend I once thought was unshakable now seemed to value sunshine and cocktails more than her own daughter's life. And yet, in a desperate attempt to cling to the image of my best friend, I kept whispering to myself, maybe she's just in shock. Maybe she doesn't know how to react. Maybe when she comes back, everything will make more sense. But deep down, I could already feel a fracture growing. It had started the moment Monica asked me if her daughter was just looking for attention. And by now, that fracture had widened into a cold, gaping rift, one I knew would be nearly impossible to mend. A week later, just as the hospital finally discharged Isabella, and I was barely getting our household back into rhythm, Monica showed up at the door like a hot gust of wind. She dragged a huge suitcase behind her, her skin bronzed and gleaming, the scent of lotion hitting me the moment I opened the door. She looked vibrant, glowing, like she'd just stepped off the pages of a travel magazine, completely out of sync with the tense, fragile atmosphere still lingering in the house. Isabella ran out, her eyes flickering with hope, but what she got in return was only a stiff, hurried hug. More like the kind you'd give a casual acquaintance you bumped into than your own daughter after a week in the hospital. I invited Monica inside, torn between wanting to keep the peace and the anger simmering inside me. At the table, I handed her the treatment plan the doctor had recommended: weekly therapy sessions, monitoring medication, and an adjusted school schedule. I explained clearly that this was necessary if Isabella was going to recover. Monica glanced at the paper, skimmed a few lines, then suddenly threw it down on the table. Her voice shot up, sharp and furious. "Who do you think you are, making plans for my daughter? This is my job, not yours. You're interfering with my right to be a mother." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "Monica, I'm not trying to replace anyone. I'm just following the doctor's advice. Isabella needs support, and—" Before I could finish, Monica cut me off, her eyes flashing with disdain. "She's just putting on a show for attention, and you're naive for falling for it." Her words cracked through the living room like thunder. I felt my heart plummet straight to the floor. But worse, there was a stifled sob from the hallway. I turned and saw Isabella standing there, her trembling hands covering her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She had heard everything. In that instant, I knew without a shred of doubt, my 20-year friendship with Monica was dead. Beyond saving, beyond trust, beyond forgiveness. Isabella burst into tears, ran to her room, and slammed the door. Rage surged through me as I turned back to Monica, my voice breaking but firm. "You just shattered her all over again. You chose the beach over her, and now you're denying her pain?" Monica only folded her arms and smirked, as if I were the one blowing things out of proportion. Things escalated faster than I could have imagined. In her fury, Monica pulled out her phone and shouted that I was trying to steal her child. Right there in front of me, she called the police, her voice ringing through the house. "My daughter is being held against her will in this home." Less than half an hour later, 2 officers knocked at my door, accompanied by a Child Protective Services worker. Swallowing my tears, I forced myself to stay calm as I explained everything. showing them Isabella's hospital discharge papers and the doctor's notes to prove her condition. While I spoke, Monica kept interrupting, accusing me of manipulating and brainwashing her daughter into turning against her. One of the officers asked, "Where is the girl now?" I led them down the hall and pointed to the closed door. From inside came the sound of muffled sobs. When a female officer gently knocked and called Isabella's name, the girl's trembling voice answered, "I don't want to go. I don't want to go back to my mom." The air in the house froze. Monica tried to push past, shouting, "Isabella, stop this nonsense and get out here right now." But the door stayed shut, and the only sound was her choked sobs spilling through, breaking the hearts of everyone present. After conferring with the officers, the Child Protective Services worker made the call. Isabella would stay at my house for 72 hours until an official evaluation could be completed. Monica's jaw dropped, her face flushed red with fury. I just stood there, my heart weighed down yet strangely relieved, because I knew that, at least in that moment, Isabella had been heard. And I also knew that the instant Monica dismissed her own daughter's pain was the moment that marked the end of a friendship I once believed would last a lifetime. After the temporary decision from Child Protective Services, I thought Monica might back down, take a step toward mending things. But I was far too naive. Just a day later, her social media exploded with sensational posts. "My best friend is mentally unstable, so obsessed with my daughter that she kidnapped her." Alongside those words were old photos of me and Isabella from family trips, now twisted and paraded as evidence to back up her claims. Some longtime friends were confused, a few left comments believing her, while others messaged me privately to ask what really happened. My inbox became a battlefield, hate-filled rants on one side, words of support on the other. That's when I realized Monica wasn't just fighting me. She wanted to destroy my reputation in front of everyone we knew. While I was struggling to weather the storm of rumors, Isabella came to me one evening, trembling. She clutched her phone tightly, her voice breaking. I read the messages on Mom's phone, from before all this happened. I looked at the screen and felt my heart twist. Monica had texted her new boyfriend. "I hate being a mom. I wish I could drop all the responsibility, disappear for a few years, and just live for myself." Those cold words, Isabella had stumbled on them herself, and that was the reason she had spiraled into such despair. "She doesn't need me anymore," Isabella sobbed. Everything I was afraid of turned out to be true. I pulled her into my arms, tears spilling onto her shoulder. There was no denying it now. The mother she once worshipped had chosen herself over her child. A few days later, the case went before family court. The courtroom didn't feel like the movies. No dramatic gavel strikes, but every word spoken there weighed heavy as stone. My lawyer presented the hospital records, the psychologist's report, and testimony from Child Protective Services. The result? The judge granted me temporary guardianship for 30 days. During that time, Isabella would stay with my family, while Monica could only see her under supervision at a social services center. I heard the ruling with a heart that was both relieved and burdened. This wasn't a victory. It was merely a breathing space for Isabella. The moment the hearing ended, an unexpected figure appeared. Gregory, Isabella's biological father. I only knew of him through Monica's stories. Always filled with contempt. He abandoned her when she was little, never sent a dime. But Gregory carried a thick folder. Receipts of monthly child support payments, legal documents showing visitation rights that had once been in place. He explained that for years he had faithfully sent money and gifts, but Monica had blocked every attempt at contact, spinning the tale of an absent father so she could keep Isabella all to herself. When Isabella saw the evidence, she broke down in sobs. "So, you never left me?" Her choked voice hung in the silent room. Gregory's head shook, his voice trembling as tears welled up. "I never left you. I've always been watching over you. I was just kept away." I watched as father and daughter embraced, and for the first time in weeks, Isabella's tears weren't only from pain. They were from release. In the days that followed, Gregory began spending real time with his daughter. He brought old photo albums, pictures of Isabella as a baby, snapshots he had taken but never been able to give her. They sat together, piecing through fragments of memories she thought were lost. Isabella studied each photo, and for the first time, she truly smiled, even though her eyes were still swollen from tears. From a distance, I could see a fragile but hopeful thread of connection being rewoven between them. In sharp contrast to that fragile healing, Monica unraveled more and more. During one therapy session, she suddenly barged into the room, demanding to be included despite the doctor's objections. She shouted accusations that I was brainwashing Isabella, throwing the entire room into chaos. The session had to be stopped immediately, and the therapist filed an urgent report with the authorities. It didn't end there. Monica created multiple fake social media accounts using aliases to smear her own daughter. One account claimed Isabella was just looking for attention, while another mocked her for not appreciating a perfect mother. But the charade didn't last. A group of Isabella's classmates uncovered proof, tracing all the accounts back to the same device. The police were alerted, and an official investigation was launched. I never imagined there would come a day when I'd watch my best friend investigated for slandering her own daughter. But everything was spiraling out of control. Monica, the woman who once claimed all she wanted was to be the best mother, was now shredding that very image with her own hands. And in the middle of all the chaos, I clung to one small truth. At least the lies were finally starting to unravel. News of Monica violating the restraining order came sooner than I expected. One afternoon, just as I brought Isabella home from school, our front door shook. Under furious pounding, checking the security camera, I saw Monica outside, her face flushed red, screaming to see her daughter. I called the police immediately. When they arrived, Monica's tone shifted. She pleaded, sobbing that she was just a desperate mother wanting to see her child. But the law doesn't look at tears, it looks at records, and hers was thick with violations. This time, the officers cuffed her and led her away, leaving behind a heavy silence on the other side of the door. The next court hearing wrapped up quickly. The judge extended my guardianship for another 6 months, emphasizing that Isabella's well-being outweighed any defense Monica could make. Monica was granted visitation only under strict supervision, and even that depended on the outcome of her mandated therapy. When I heard the ruling, a bit of the weight on my shoulders lifted. It wasn't victory, but it was a fragile kind of peace. For the first time in months, Isabella could finally take a breath without fear. Meanwhile, Gregory was officially granted visitation rights. He arranged regular weekends to bring Isabella to his home, where his new wife and 2 young children welcomed her. For the first time, Isabella experienced what it was like to have half-siblings, to call another woman Aunt Karen without guilt. I'll never forget the evening she came home after that first visit. She was smiling, her eyes glowing, telling me about teaching her little sister how to build with blocks, about the fresh apple pie her grandmother had baked. That voice, that smile, I hadn't seen them in so long. Gregory hadn't just brought the truth into the light, he had given Isabella a second family, a safe haven she once believed she'd never have. And yet, even as life slowly settled into something steady again, a scar remained inside me. Many nights, when the house was asleep, I sat alone in the kitchen with a cup of cold tea in my hand, haunted by one question. How does a 20-year friendship vanish in just a few weeks? We had shared our youth, watched our daughters grow up side by side, even joked about becoming in-laws someday. And then, it all collapsed so quickly, like a sandcastle swallowed by a raging wave. Then one morning, I came across a photo Monica had posted from her beach vacation. Her radiant smile framed by a clear blue sky, the caption, "Living my best life." And suddenly, I understood the answer. That friendship had died the moment she chose the beach over her own daughter's life. Everything that followed, the lies, the smear posts, the furious outbursts, was just the fallout. The true death of our friendship happened the second Monica decided to keep her plane ticket instead of holding her child in the hospital. Looking back, I feel both bitterness and a strange kind of release. I lost a friend I once trusted completely, but I also shed the illusion of blind permanence. Some friendships last for decades, seeming eternal, but one single rupture can make them collapse entirely. When Isabella sleeps peacefully in her room, when Sophie's laughter still rings bright through the house, I remind myself there's nothing left to mourn. That friendship is over. And I know the exact day it ended. That was the day I realized our long-term friendship had ended for good.